Hello, Houston. How are you? It's Mr. McKinney here with Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston, live from the Heritage Society. We're back for Season 2. Really excited to be here. We've got some great updates for you and some wonderful speakers, so do not miss out on a full season. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're seeing more and more people actually are signing up right now, which we appreciate. And, of course, we'll have some question and answers afterwards, some great prizes and all that fun stuff, too. Well, today's a big day because we have with us the one and only Justice Ken Wise. You guys know him. You'll love his podcast, Wise About Texas. We're going to talk about it today in detail. He's going to give us a great, fun little crash course in Texas history. What better time? We're in the month of March, right? Texas History Month, so looking forward to that. But, of course, we always have an update at the Heritage Society from our Executive Director, Allison Bell. Here she is. Come on down, Allison Bell.
Where's my surprise picture?
Oh, yes, that's okay. We always have a surprise picture, but, well, that's a surprise picture. You haven't seen it in a couple of months.
No, I haven't.
And that's, of course, Priscilla T. Graham, who was on the show earlier, which we appreciate her being on last season. Well, let's talk about what happened a couple of weeks ago.
We've missed you. I'm so glad you're back.
Well, thank you.
Yay.
I'm glad to be back. It's a lot of fun.
We've missed this. And people have actually said, when are you having the shows come back? So
Well, look at that. Well, here we are for a whole season again, so we're looking forward to this. So tell us what happened, because something magical happened at the Heritage Society a couple of weeks ago, okay?
Sure. So our board president, Minette Basil, had this idea swimming around in her head for quite some time, and we thought she was crazy, and she wanted to do express weddings, and we thought there's no way, and nobody's going to want to get married. And guess what? We hosted 30 weddings in 3 days over the 3-day period with several hundred people as their guests right before the ice storm. And it was a huge success. We had over 150 people calling. We could only fill 30 slots, so it was.
And shout out to Kirksey Gregg, by the way. Not only did he officiate some of the weddings,
he donated everything.
Absolutely, and got some friends and partners involved too. Who's other folks over here?
Oh my gosh, this is a wonderful group called Heartstrings, and they played for the entire 3 days. These two ladies sat in those chairs for 3 days straight. Well, they did go home and go to sleep.
And the flowers? Who did the flowers?
Kirksey Gregg's company. He has a company called Rexberry. Oh, let me get the name straight. Rexberry Events, Weddings and Events. And they do weddings for a living. And so Kirksey sent them over. They brought us beautiful decorations. They gave every bride and groom a bouquet and a boutonniere. And
by the way, all for $150.
$150.
That's a steal.
They got champagne.
And it was Valentine's weekend. That was the whole idea behind this, okay? This express wedding idea. Show your love for each other, but also show your love for the historical buildings. The 1891 St. John's Church, the beautiful church that's on property here, that, by the way, is available for rentals beyond just that weekend. So people should know about that. And I love the fact that the congregation, St. John's, that actually donated the church, they have a clause in their contract. What do they get to do every year? They always join us.
They come back for Christmas Eve with their congregation, and they have their own private service in the church.
Isn't that wonderful? And it used to be located on 290 in Magnum area, north by White Oak Bayou in that area. So a lot of history here. Among the 10 structures we have, that's one of the ones that most people really enjoy. And like I said, it's available for rentals.
It was a fun Valentine's weekend.
There's Minette Basil. We talked about her earlier. There she is. And then there's Wanda Adams, the new Justice of the Peace.
All of our officiants donated their time. And Mister McKinney and I were actually on a TV or a radio show.
Well, shout out to our new communications manager.
Oh, yes. Yes, Anna Trejo is our new communications manager, and she got us lots of press.
Lots of press. So it was a great opportunity for us to be able to showcase the history here at the Heritage Society, but also offer I think it's a community service to the public.
Sure.
A wonderful, affordable wedding for some lucky folks. And you guys went above and beyond, because originally it was supposed to be 1 day or 2 days, and it ends up being
3.
Oh, my goodness. So thank you so much. And there's information on our website, by the way, on when you can learn more about what we do here and also the rentals as well. Well, thank you so much about that. Our big event that we're really excited to have in May is what?
Natsuo, which is Houston spelled backwards, for those of you who have not heard that before. Everything's spelled backwards in Natsuo, the king and the queen and the royal court. And this year it's on Friday, May 7th, and it'll be at Ballroom on the Bayou, another event space owned by Kirksey Gregg, our board member. He's generous enough to let us have it there because it can be spread out, COVID-friendly. It's a 10,000 square foot
Yeah,
ballroom.
the walls even come up in some areas.
Yes.
That's the 1967 Albert Thomas Convention Center, which is our not our first major convention center, but one of the main ones back in 1967 before the George R. Brown. So it's an historic building, by the way. We've had a wonderful sip there. So Laura Woods, our development director, is working hard on this event. And if you want more information about joining us at the event or sponsoring the event, you can go to our website, which is
www.heritagesociety.org.
You got it.
Are you going to say who the...
Well, we probably should. So let's talk about our chairs first, our amazing chairs.
Oh, our amazing chairs.
That have been so generous and kind and were really active last year.
Yes.
Talk about the chairs.
So last year's king and queen were Duke and Cece Enzel. So it's King Nodic, which is cotton spelled backwards, and it's Queen Allingam, which is magnolia spelled backwards. So this year they're chairing the event, and we have our wonderful king and queen this year happens to be Justice Ken Wise and his wife Sarah. So we're very excited about that too.
That is awesome. We're looking forward to the event. So don't you miss out. Come join us at the event. If you feel comfortable joining us, come on, do that. You can get more information on the website,
Yes.
heritagesociety.org.
And it's a fun Mardi Gras type party.
And the date again?
Friday, May 7th.
Friday, May 7th.
Everyone should be vaccinated by then.
True.
Let's
There
hope.
you go.
Yeah. So we're
wonderful.
we're excited to be back out in public again.
Okay, well, we got to talk about this
Oh.
because it's closing in a couple of weeks. It's your last opportunity, by the way, to check out this wonderful exhibit, which will be leaving the Heritage Society. Talk about the exhibit.
Sure. So it's hard to believe it's finally coming to a close. We opened it last June. It was supposed to open in March or April, but because of COVID, our wonderful suffrage exhibit highlighting women from Houston who were involved in the suffrage movement, such as Julia Idison. We have Julia Idison's dress. We have Barbara Jordan's papers. You can do a virtual tour for only $5. We've had a lot of takers on virtual tours over this past year. And that was Lisa Carey's idea to get that done. And then, of course, we'd love for you to come into our museum and see the exhibit before it closes at the end of March.
And information and hours are all on the website because the hours have changed. So definitely go to the website. And the virtual tour is really nice because you can actually pinch and zoom in, and you can even read the items that are on these boards over here. So it really is an experience for just $5 that you can do here in Houston or really anywhere in the world. So please take advantage of those opportunities at heritagesociety.org. Okay?
And tomorrow we have a lecture, tomorrow at noon. Oh, thank you. You have it up there. Thank you for thinking of that. This is, our topic is mid-century on to the next century. The future is female. We have several professors from all of our local universities, TSU, Rice, and U of H, of course, and our moderator, Dr. Liz Lara Carreño. She's involved with HCC. So this is going to be really interesting. It's a virtual 1 hour. You'll listen to them discuss, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So if you're interested in that, it's free for Heritage Society members, or a whopping $5 if you want to log on tomorrow.
There you go. You can't miss out. Absolutely.
Thanks
what
for
else do we have?
remembering.
Thank you again, Allison Ayers-Bell, for
course.
joining us as Executive for the Heritage Society. We appreciate you as always. And like I said, go to the heritagesociety.org for more information.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
All. Thank you. Have a
You
great
got it.
show.
Well, let's continue with the program. We want to make sure we say thank you to our speaker last season. Our last speaker was November. You might remember Douglas Weiskopf. He talked about the history of rail here in Houston, okay? Took us back on a journey to the 1860s, 1850s, and beyond. So we really appreciate him doing that. His book, Rails Around Houston, is available all over the place, Amazon and anywhere else books are sold. So I want to say thank you to him for doing that for us too, okay? All right, let's see what else we got. Also, by the way, if you missed it, this was Priscilla T. Graham's show that we had. We also had Steve Curry with Houston Mod, and then we also had Robert Sakowitz come on, part of our Legend series that we had. You can get all of these past episodes on the Heritage Society's YouTube page. So please make sure you go to our YouTube page. We have only 216 subscribers, although I noticed earlier it's actually ticked up to about 230. So that means 14 more people saw this and said they want to like our subscribing to our YouTube page. That means a lot to us, by the way. It really does help us. Once you get to 1,000 or so sponsors, you can or subscribers, you can do different things on YouTube, which we want to continue to do, like live shows and stuff of that nature. So by the way, you can also find other past videos, professionally done videos. There's Michael Daniel, by the way, who's a documentary filmmaker. Did a lot of great videos on history tours, African American tours, architecture tours, a whole series that he also co-produced and put together with HAMC. So all these great stuff that are going on our YouTube page, okay? Save the date, Wednesday, April 17th. 7 o'clock is our next live show. I am very excited about this show. In fact, I know he's actually tuning in because I saw him log on. The one and only Neil Parker is going to be joining us talking about the history of 6th Ward. We're excited about this because 6th Ward, the last ward to actually be established here in Houston, is not talked about often. And Neil Parker's lecture he's going to do next month in April 7th at 7 o'clock is going to be the one that he did at Rice University a couple of years ago. So he's going to kind of revive that back. So we're very fortunate to have Neil Parker, who lives in 6th Ward, who's been active in 6th Ward, and really telling the story of the old historic 6th Ward on next month. So do not miss out on that. Okay. Oh, we have a new show sponsor. We want to make sure we say thank you, by the way. Thank you to Dirty Tony's. Dirty Tony's, premium blue cheese olives. Here we go, Dirty Tony's. Want to say thank you to them for their awesome support. They've got some great premium blue cheese queen olives, and then, of course, olive juice as well. Dirty Tony's, there it is. Tell them thank you because we really appreciate them supporting the show. There you go. And you can get more information about Dirty Tony's, by the way, at dirty-tonys.com. They're a local company. They've been in business for over 30 years here in the Houston area, and we do appreciate them supporting the show and supporting history. They make history of their own as well. By the way, it's now time to mention that Justice Ken Wise is going to be on the Houston Hour tomorrow. This is the live show that I do on the radio Thursdays at 3 o'clock on 90.1 KPFT. Justice Ken Wise is joining Heidi Vaughn from Heidi Vaughn Fine Art, my awesome special guest co-host. It's happening tomorrow, Thursday at 3 o'clock on 90.1 KPFT. So don't miss that show as well. We'll talk about, we can't cover everything in this 1 hour, so we'll do on that hour as well. So you don't want to miss Justice Wise on the Houston Hour. Okay, tomorrow. Let's see what else is coming up. Oh, by the way, make sure you like and follow Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston and the Houston History Bus. This is really important because you can learn about things that we do on board the History Bus. We do offer free tours to the public, but you only find out about the free tours when you like and follow Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston and the Houston History Bus. And as you can imagine, the weather's getting better now, so we'll be doing a lot more free tours outdoors for the public, paid for by sponsors, so we do appreciate that. And if you ever want to rent the bus out or come join us, you're more than welcome to call or text 713-364-8674, 713-364-8674. Yes, that's my actual cell phone. You're more than welcome to call or text me. Okay, there's the handles again. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, and also be sure to watch, by the way, Channel 39 next Friday, March 12th, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., by the way. It's a long window time, but we're going to be doing something that Allison Bell and I did last year with Maggie Flecknoe, featuring women. Historic Houston women that have made great strides throughout the years here in Houston. So we're going to honor and feature them on the TV show on Channel 39. You'll right here live from the Heritage Society for that show, Channel 39, Maggie Flecknoe. It's wonderful. CW39 does a show in the mornings for 4 hours. So yes, we're going to be on from about 6:15 to about 9:45, 9:50, okay, with 3 different hits and 3 different breaks. So you'll see a lot of the Heritage Society, and we'll be showcasing the Women's History exhibit and also showcasing, like I said, some important women here in Houston area, many of which are strong supporters of the Heritage Society. So tune in for that and find out who we're going to feature. All right. Once again, be sure to watch 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on next Friday on CW39. Okay. Hey, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm excited because he's someone that I greatly admire, somebody who I appreciate what he does to promote Texas history, especially when it comes to young people. He'll tell you about how this podcast that he has, Wise About Texas, has gone viral. Everybody's talking about it because it's great content, great quality, but more importantly, he is somebody also who's been shepherding Texas history for many, many years. You're going to learn all about it right now. Let's honor and welcome Justice Ken Wise to the show. Hello. Look at this. Man, my pleasure. Good to see you too. We've had some fun over the last couple of weeks promoting the show. I'm going to put this little mic over here. I am just so thrilled that you're on the show because, like I said, you and I have a lot in common. We just had this mutual love. Can you get the audio on? Got it? Okay. Good. Mutual love for Texas history. So let's go over this real quick. Let's see. First off, you've got the best office in Harris County. We got to talk about this first and foremost. Let people know where you office out of.
Well, it's officially called the Historic 1910 Courthouse. It's at 301 Fannin, and that's actually the 5th courthouse on that block. But what's so important about that block is when the Allen brothers laid out Houston, that block was designated the courthouse square, where it, of course, remains. And one of the first courts of the Republic of Texas was convened at 301 Fannin in March of 1837. So it's really an honor to be able to go to work every day on the appellate court right where it all started.
Look at that. And show listeners and viewers about the inside. I mean, this is just a palace.
Well, the great thing, Houston has got a little bit of a rough reputation when it comes to historic preservation. But this is one of the older buildings in town that, as I mentioned, opened in 1910, that has been restored to its former grandeur. It was renovated in the 50s. And actually, when I was a brand new judge many years ago, my office was in that building, and it looked nothing like that because it had been redone and there had been offices added and floors where there were never intended to be floors and decorative features were ripped out, etc. That was all put back in.
I mean, look at the beautiful detail. So in 2010, they completed, they do a big renovation, of course, but I mean, and I was told there was like drop-down ceilings for air conditioning that they put back in the 1950s.
Yes,
in 1953, the courthouse across the street opens as the Harris County, civil courthouse. So this beautiful gem maybe wasn't as active and as used, but just the idea of them peeling back a lot of this history. So I'm sure, it's a beautiful office now to have. And look at that. Tell folks what we're looking at right there.
Well, you're looking up from the second floor lobby straight up above your head through the rotunda to that beautiful stained glass window. Now, interestingly, we didn't have any pictures of how it actually looked, but that's as good an approximation as we could give it. It's just gorgeous. It's an unexpected jewel in downtown Houston for people that visit it.
Now, and the Vaughn Construction Company did a great job with this. Now, they did my buddy Jeffrey Mills, a documentary filmmaker, did a book. You've got a copy of that book?
I've got a copy of that book.
It's a beautiful book.
It's
I've got one too. That's just, I just love the construction company decided to commission this book because of the great job they wanted to showcase the work they did, and it's rare. If you ever find a copy of it, I mean, now you can get it on Amazon and on eBay, and it's like $800. But it's a wonderful coffee table book, so look out for that.
It's a great building.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about you growing up and loving Texas history. Where did it all start? You're a native Houstonian.
Native
Texan,
Houstonian. My great-great-grandfather came to Houston in late 1836, early 1837, was a physician. And he got married here, and then in 1842 moved to Montgomery, Texas. And I had the good fortune of spending a lot of time in Montgomery in the 70s growing up and walking around the places where he had lived and where he had worked. He had a hotel up there, etc. Was a county commissioner. He was very involved in the community. But I would, find artifacts, find a brick in a field that would have belonged to the old house, etc. So I was really connected to the history early on in my life, and that's where I think that's where it all started. You don't know it at the time, you're a little kid, but hearing the stories and all that is just really remarkable.
Well, and you said it best. I mean, it's Texas. We're just so blessed to have a colorful history. There's some states that maybe not as exciting.
Well, I was telling somebody the other day, we've got Texas history. You do not ever have to fictionalize any part of Texas history. And people that do so at their peril, because it often doesn't turn out very well. Mm-hmm. Just the stories, the events, the archetypes, the characters, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. And what's so great about this is that, and we're gonna dive into the podcast. You capture so many of these great stories, in the podcast, and let's talk about that. So, how did the podcast come about? How did it all start?
That's a long story, but it came about basically because I was getting involved in the Texas history community, but I really didn't have any projects. I had little kids at the time writing books, even writing journal articles, which I do several of. It takes a long time, and I was just looking for some way to kind of honestly give back to the history community. I thought, what can I do? Well, you can do some speaking, which I do a ton of speaking every year on Texas history, but I started looking for Texas history podcasts, and there really weren't any doing the kind of history that I wanted to do, which is scholarly research, yet entertaining and engaging storytelling. And so I thought, well, maybe that's something I can do. I can talk an article every now and then. And it's really turned out to be much, much bigger than I ever thought it could be.
And how many episodes do you have so far?
I just released the 98th episode. Now there are some bonus episodes, so I'm
Not
really
counting
bad
those
about
yet.
sort of marking them
We
down.
gotta
So I'm over
do a
100.
party. We
I
gotta
know,
do
we gotta-
100 episodes.
But 98 main episodes, and then there's a few bonus episodes in there. But just released the 98th this week.
And let audience members know real quick, where can they go? I mean, I know, where's the best place to go to get the podcast?
Well,
and
anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll find it. It's been, I put it on as many platforms as I could, but then I got invited onto some other platforms. So I'm very honored by that. And it's on pretty much any podcast platform that you can find. And then there's a website, wiseabouttexas.com, where I put all the episodes.
And that's probably the best place to start, because
start
don't
there,
you also
yeah.
have little footnotes, a little bitty articles about it as well?
Just a little blurb about what's coming up on the episode, and you can listen to it through the website if you want to, sure.
That's easy for folks that maybe are intimidated by the whole podcast process or the downloading of an app. Just go to that website, wiseabouttexas.com. All right, well, let's start talking about, it's so appropriate, by the way, because not only is March Texas History Month, which most people know, what they don't know is March is also what History Month for some people? Women's History.
Well, Women's History Month, and yes.
I think so many folks don't realize that it's Women's History Month. So
Absolutely.
let's start with a famous Texas and Houston woman, right?
Well, Texas women are just amazing creatures.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And they have been such an integral part of our history. And as the doing of history has matured and more focus has been placed on women's history, you end up learning a lot of Texas history just studying incredible women from the past. Let's see who you put up there. You put up Pamelia Mann, who that lady owns some oxen, and that's the Texas Army marching behind her. This is a famous painting. And they asked if they could borrow her oxen to pull the twin sister cannon towards San Jacinto, and she told Sam Houston, well, yeah, you can use them as long as you're not going toward Harrisburg, which of course is now Houston and eventually San Jacinto. If you're going toward Louisiana, you can have them. So they got the oxen. And of course, we don't have a record of that conversation, but we do know that around present-day Tomball, the Army took a turn toward San Jacinto, and Miss Mann came riding up when she discovered that and demanded her oxen back. And Sam Houston tried to talk her into letting them use them. She cussed Sam Houston out, cut her oxen off the cannon with her own knife, and marched them back to her farm, which is the scene depicted in this painting. And the funny end to that story is that the wagon master for the Army said, I'll go get the oxen, and Sam Houston warned him, don't do it. And he took off after Miss Mann. He came back with a ripped shirt and no oxen. So those boys were pushing those cannon through the mud.
Wow, and that wasn't a light cannon. Look at that.
That's a great example of another strong Texas woman, and she ended up in Houston.
Yeah, and she has a Houston connection, and here it is, right? Check out that. I mean, let's talk about
that's
this.
Market
Market
Square.
Square.
The corner. That's right across from Market Square, the corner of Travis and Milam, and that's Congress and Milam, and that's was the site of the Mansion House Hotel, and Pamelia Mann was involved in that. She owned real estate in Houston, and that was 1838. So there he is.
Hey, he just had a birthday.
He had a birthday yesterday.
How about that?
Yep.
Most people don't realize that. We are taught in Texas history. We know that March 2nd, 1836. Okay, that's Texas Independence Day. But it's a fun fact that happens to also be.
And that's Sam Houston's birthday. Yep, born in Virginia.
Look at that. And he's covered throughout your podcast. I mean, he's probably crosses over a few episodes.
Yeah, I tell you, when I could do that podcast full time, and I'd probably be more organized with my episodes, but it's so intimidating when you got a character like Sam Houston. How do you do a podcast on Sam Houston? I mean, it'd be 10 episodes, and so
we've seen those books on him. I mean, there's 1,001 books on him, which is great.
He appears in many of the episodes, and I've got some good plans to do more stories from Sam Houston's life, because just his life is truly amazing.
If people have ideas for stories, where do they go? How do they get a hold of you to do that?
Well, they can get on the website and email me, host@wiseabouttexas.com. I've got a running list of literally hundreds of ideas, and I go in there and organize a few of them every now and then and figure out what's a good story that has some broad appeal, and so very interesting.
Can you give us a scoop? What do you think is going to be your 100th episode?
I don't know. Honestly, I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
I haven't decided, but
okay, because it's coming up.
It's coming up.
And do you release? How often do you release them?
Well, I try to release one every 2 to 4 weeks, and that's about the best I can do.
Sure.
Service as a justice on the Court of Appeals is rather busy, and I have a family that occasionally likes to see me, so I can't do it as often as I would like, and I don't just throw them out there to have them out there.
Sure.
You know, I'm doing it for the love. It's totally free. It'll always be free. So, you know, it gives me a little freedom to, if I do one in 2 weeks or if I do one in 4 weeks. If there's something I want to do a deep dive on, I'm not going to let the scholarship or the stories suffer just in the interest of getting something out. So, but I've noticed as it's grown, if I don't get something out in 3 weeks, I start getting emails wondering where it is. So that's a compliment and a curse at the same time.
That's a following.
A lot of pressure.
Those audience members, they want to make sure that they get their weekly fix. Well, I love that, and of course, people may not be familiar with this.
That's a great picture. Yeah, that's the White House for the Republic of Texas, at least in Houston, and the capital, of course, of the Republic was in Houston for a time, and that's a pretty rough house that Sam Houston had to live in. There's an account, and it's in one of the episodes of the podcast. John James Audubon came to Houston. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was 1837, if I recall correctly. I did an episode on it. And he met President Houston in that house, and he described it. And it was not a very charitable description, but it's probably dead on accurate.
Look at that. Yeah, that's humble quarters.
Yes.
You know, oh, wow. This structure, most people might know this, but for those who don't know what we're looking at.
That's the Capitol building of the Republic of Texas, but that photo, I believe, was taken later after it became what was known as the Capitol Hotel. And so the capital of the Republic, when it was in Houston, the building was where the Rice Hotel is now. And it became the Capitol Hotel. William Marsh Rice bought it and renamed it. But that was the capital of the Republic of Texas. When they first met, by the way, there was no roof, so everything got wet.
Yeah, I heard about that. And, and of course, we also meet every 2 years on odd years. 1837 was the first time. But, yeah, you're right. I heard about that as well. It was either late March, early April, but not the best times in Houston. So how about this? Here we go.
Well, that's a map of the route of the two armies in the Texas Revolution. And you can see how, in the blue line, how Houston and the Texas Army made that turn towards San Jacinto and came right through Harrisburg, which had been burned by Santa Ana, and crossed over to Peggy McCormick's ranch, which is where they ended up meeting the Mexican Army on April 21st. So a lot of Texas history occurred in our area. Very important Texas history.
What's important to note is that we're coming across the 185th anniversary. Right. So we and as historians, we like milestones, we like birthdays, we like things that we can bring more attention and awareness to things that are happening. And the great thing about the Heritage Society is we're the ones that have been doing the birthday party consistently, and we're going to be doing it again, even if it's a virtual experience or limited. We're committed to making sure that we celebrate Houston's birthday, which is August 30th, 1836, but April 21st, 1836 is certainly coming up, and we want everybody to know about that and make sure they celebrate either in their own special way or by visiting the San Jacinto Monument, because it's an important story to tell. And speaking of,
well, that's the famous Battle of San Jacinto. Part of it, the painting that hangs in the chamber of the Senate.
Tell viewers a little bit about the battle itself, or just some fun facts about the battle, because I know you've got a podcast separately about that. And by the way, all the topics that we're doing right now, there certainly was no way to cover them all, but this is giving you a small overview. For example, the one about we just talked about a second ago is also a separate podcast, so you can get a lot of these on wiseabouttexas.com and then scroll through and find for yourself. And you're great about also doing bonus episodes as well. If you find additional information, or you want to clear the record, or something new comes to light, amongst your detailed research. So that's the great thing about staying tuned to the website. And also, you're also on social media. Let people know where they can follow you on social media.
We're on Twitter and Instagram at Wise About Texas, and there's a Wise About Texas Facebook page too. Yeah.
There you go, guys. So get plugged in and make sure you follow those. But the battle, I think we're getting close to it. But give some people some fun facts about the battle itself. Assume that they don't. Maybe they're just moving to Houston or Texas for the first time. I mean, we take it for granted because obviously we grew up in Texas, so we're required by state law to have Texas history in 4th and 7th grade, and then that kind of breeds an interest, and people start doing their own research and having a good time. But let people know a little bit about the battle itself.
Well, the Battle of San Jacinto ended a tremendous, a very difficult period, because the revolution is said to begin on October the 2nd, 1835, in what's referred to as the Battle of Gonzales, where the Mexican army came and tried to disarm the citizens of Gonzales, take a cannon that they had loaned them away, and shots were fired, and those are considered the first shots of the Texas Revolution. Well, they ran the part of the Mexican army off, and then they had the Battle of Concepcion and the Siege of Béjar, all of which were victories for the Texians. But then Santa Anna and the main Mexican army marched into Texas, and it became a series of defeats. Of course, we're in the middle, when we're on this show, in the middle of the anniversary of the Siege of the Alamo, and we all know how that ended. Not good for the Texans. And then the massacre at Goliad, also a significant defeat. And Sam Houston bringing the army on a, depending on how you think of Sam Houston, it was either a retreat or a tactical countermarch, and away from the Mexican army to stretch their supply lines. And so things were dire, but the people of Texas were eager to engage with Santa Anna and have the decisive battle. And they were sort of racing each other to Lynch's Ferry, which is now the Lynchburg Ferry, which still operates. So you can ride the Lynchburg Ferry and be crossing the San Jacinto River at the same place people have done for almost a couple hundred years. And there was a ranch there owned by a lady named Peggy McCormick, there with her two sons. Her husband had passed away, had drowned, and she was running this ranch by herself. And the armies kind of circled each other, and that's where they eventually met. And the battle, the decisive battle of the Texas Revolution, lasted a whopping 18 minutes. As probably most viewers of this show know, the Texians caught the Mexican army literally sleeping and surprised them, and it was over in 18 minutes, and Texas was free.
I think it was, 4:33 p.m. or something like that?
It was depending on who you talk to,
yeah.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. It was.
But that's strategic because, as some of y'all might know, maybe it's going to be a test question, what kind of happens in the Mexican and the European culture from 3 to 5?
Well, it was nap time, and they thought, the Texans thought, it was funny because they were so eager to attack the Mexican army. The soldiers were eager to attack. The government officials were demanding that Sam Houston attack. And so Sam Houston called a council of war among his officers, fully expecting them, I'm sure, to say, yes, we're ready to attack. And they all voted not to attack. They all voted to wait because they thought the Mexican army was going to attack them. Excuse me. But as they observed the army, they noticed they were taking the horses down to water one at a time, unsaddled, and trying to, build barricades or what have you, and nothing much was happening. So they figured out they were not going to attack. And not only were they not going to attack, they weren't ready. And that's when they attacked.
Look at that.
So,
and describe for viewers out there kind of what was the average soldier like? I mean, we've heard stories about, these individuals. I mean, they're, like you said, they're eager, ready for action, and there's all these states that, people migrated here for some of that action, right?
Oh, yeah. People came consistently through 1835 and into 1836 from other places to participate in the revolution. They were promised land if they, or a certificate for land, if they served in the army 6 months. And so that was a great incentive because, of course, land at that time was wealth. And you're not going to be able to just go get it in the United States. So it was a great benefit. And so the Army, but the funny thing about the Texas Army was it was mostly a volunteer army, and Army is even a strong term because it started out as kind of a volunteer militia. So these guys would come and go at their pleasure. And if they got mad at their officers, they'd just leave. And so there were a lot of problems in that regard. But by the time we got to the Battle of San Jacinto, we were ready to go, obviously.
We want to do a couple shout outs, by the way. We've got Debbie Spears joining us on the Facebook Live show. Sandra Lord, our buddy Sandra Lord, thanks for chiming in. She's tuning in. Laura Van Ness is on. We also have Kevin McCon, Paige Go, Laura Woods, our Director of Development, tuning in. Mark White, Ray, Sherry. Who else do we have? We have a guy named Davy Crockett on, which I think is a little impossible.
We were wondering where he'd gone. Yes.
But now we know. So speaking of, and we're coming, the anniversary's coming up March 6th. Give us a little bit of info about a famous battle, maybe some fun things that you found in your research about the battle over at the Alamo.
The Alamo, well...
because that gets a lot of attention.
It does, and I've not done an episode on the actual battle, like so-and-so was here and so-and-so was there. That's been covered umpteen times. I did do an episode on the survivors of the Battle of the Alamo. There were several survivors. And then, of course, the great debate, and there's a book by this title by Dr. James Crisp, How Did Davy Die? And if you want to start an argument at a group of Texas historians, you say, how did Davy Crockett die? And by the way, he went by David Crockett. He hated Davy, but there's a lot of controversy about that. It's really unknowable for sure, but it is fun to talk about. So
Yeah.
some think he died as we all grew up, swinging old Betsy as a club, etc. And there are some accounts of that, and some think he was captured and executed, which there are other accounts of that. So I guess we'll never know for sure.
And I also want to be able to say that, hey, Michael Bloodworth just tuned in, one of our very first speakers. Actually, I think he was our very first official historian because Allison Bill kicked off our show. Michael Bloodworth just tuned in, and he's got a great Facebook page called Houston's Aviation History. And on March 2nd, 1925, I believe, or 28 rather, it's on his Facebook page. He'll tell you all about what happened there in regards to opening up our municipal airport. So Michael Bloodworth with Houston's Aviation History just chimed in, and a good friend of the show. So thank you, Mr.
He's
Bloodworth.
got there's some great aviation history in Houston.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from him, from his
he's
Facebook page,
good.
and then from hearing him speak.
And he
It's
lectures
great.
often over at the 1940 Air Terminal Museum. So like I said, make sure you follow the 1940 Air Terminal Museum's page as well. And that's what we do at the Heritage Society. We love to showcase and share individual information about the historical community here. So lots of great partners like Justice Wise with his Wise About Texas podcast, like the great work the Heritage Society does as well, promoting local history. Texas history is what we do. Well, let's continue. Let's see what else we got.
Yeah, what do you got?
Well, this is time.
Oh.
This is time. Let's talk about this. In Texas history.
Well, this is not the first pandemic we've experienced in Houston. Houston was advertised when it was founded as a very healthy climate and very cool in the summers and generally great weather all the time. And unfortunately, yellow fever was a scourge of early Texas, and anywhere near the coast, including Houston, you had yellow fever problems and a deadly disease. Killed, I can't remember the statistic, significant percentage of people that got it. And they couldn't figure out how it was carried. And of course, we now know it was carried by mosquitoes, which are plentiful around here, as us natives are not. Well, you never get used to the mosquitoes, I don't think.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Anyway, that yellow fever was a terrible, terrible problem that we had. And so, Houston's been through it before, and here we are coming out of another one. But quarantines were not unknown. Galveston, of course, suffered probably more than Houston, and it was just a big problem. But it led to a lot of advances in yellow fever. I mean, Texans, Dr. Ashbel Smith wrote an entire pamphlet on it based on his observations in Galveston. And of course, you read it and you'd snicker now because just the average citizen knows more about medicine, probably more scientific medicine.
But they discovered it.
But they discovered it, and so. Texans, as we always do, they jumped right in and tried to figure it out. So,
Well, talk about this, the twin sisters.
those are not the twin sisters from San Jacinto. Well, I mentioned them earlier. The twin sisters were two cannon given by the citizens of Cincinnati to the Texas Army, and they arrived as Houston was on his tactical countermarch, camped at Gross's Plantation, which is near present-day Hempstead. And when they crossed the Brazos, they received these two cannon. And, of course, we told the story of Pamelia Man and her oxen tribe, but they did manage to get them to San Jacinto. And that was the only artillery the Texian Army had.
But you've got a great podcast that goes a little more detail about the twin sisters,
right? Because it's one of the great mysteries of Texas history is what happened to those two cannon. And so that has never been solved. There have been people that have dug up the
all
entirety of East Houston trying to find these things. There are accounts that they went to Louisiana during the Civil War. There are accounts that they were thrown into the bayou. There are accounts that early Houstonians talk about one of them or both of them being on Market Square and being fired on San Jacinto Day. I remember one account, I think it's a guy named S.O. Young, who said, well, they would roll that cannon down to Commerce Street and where the Fannin Street Bridge is now, which was a hill then, hard to imagine, and fire it off. So whether that was the actual one of the actual cannons, of course, is the issue, because you can say, well, that's one of them. And, I thought the ones at the Capitol were in Austin were the original when I was growing up, but you never know. So,
but it's one of those legends and lores, things that you learn. You know, and
if anybody knows where they are, email me at host@wiseabouttexas.com.
You hear that? If you've got
we need to find them. Yeah, that's right.
If your great grandfather's got a diary that says, you know, here's the map, you know, X marks the spot. Let Justice Wise know, because you know, that's a big deal for all of us.
That would be a significant find.
Absolutely. Well, this is the part of the show that we like people to chime in. So let's see if there is any questions for you. I mean, I know that as we look through this, we'll see who's got questions. I know I have one. If you had a time machine and could go back in Texas history, you're only limited to Texas, you can't leave the state, okay, where would you go? And what year?
Do I only get one choice?
You get two choices. You get to go to two different years.
Two choices.
So you get to be part of Texas history. You get to be the room where it happened.
All right. Well, this may surprise you and the viewers. I don't know. I think I would like to be present at the Alamo early on, before the siege, when Travis was arriving and Bowie was still upright, and I would like to talk to those gentlemen at that moment. And the other time I'd like to be,
What would you ask them?
Well, they were vying for command because the government was very dysfunctional at that time. For example, President Henry Smith was purportedly impeached. He refused to leave. Those sorts of shenanigans were going on at the time while these guys were going to the Alamo. And then a group of folks had taken much of the food stores, et cetera, from the Alamo to go invade Mexico at Matamoros. And so the Alamo was in somewhat dire shape when they arrived there. And Travis wanted to defend it there. And, of course, Fannin wanted to defend Goliad. And I would have liked to have been there to listen to Bowie and Travis and the others there, just to understand how they felt at the time and what their expectations were. We can discern it from the letters that Travis sent and the messages that went out and the accounts of the messengers, but I think that would be very interesting. The other thing the other time and place I'd like to be is I'd like to talk to Sam Houston right at the time of the secession convention in 1861, because I don't know if I've yet to do a podcast on this story, but Sam Houston was governor, and he was not in favor of secession, and he was very stridently against it, as a matter of fact, for rational reasons that turned out to be correct, as we all know. And he refused to take the oath of loyalty. There was an election. The people of Texas voted to secede, and he refused to take the oath to the Confederacy, and they kicked him out of office. And so I would like to talk to him at that time and talk about that situation, because that was much bigger than just we're about to fight a war.
Yeah.
It was much bigger than whether you're pro-slavery or anti-slavery. I mean, it was a serious structural situation for the government.
And that must have broken his heart. I mean, this is somebody
It shattered his heart, absolutely.
I mean, he dies, shortly,
Yep.
2 years later in 1863. I think just to be there to comfort him.
But what was so interesting about that was, we had been a republic. We had been on our own.
Oh, yeah.
And so, secede or not, do we need to join the Confederate? I don't know. It was a fascinating time. Maybe that's the lawyer in me that wants to go back and see that. And of course, he took a stand for what he believed in and stuck with it, even to the point of just being kicked out of the state that he helped create.
Now, and talk about your podcast and the work that you do, being a resource for teachers. I mean, let teachers know and educators know, opportunities that you offer.
Well, one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is so that I can keep the stories of Texas history accessible to people, and as our technology changes and as the way we live our lives changes, I thought, this might be a real blessing if I can get Texas history on a platform where younger people might actually access it. And one of the blessings of this whole journey I've been on is that teachers from around the state use this podcast. And in connection with the podcast, did a webinar the other day with the Texas Historical Commission. We had entire classes from around Texas watching that. And so that kind of stuff really, that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So,
well, you're great. You're a great speaker. You're fun. You're engaging. And I can imagine these students just, think the world of you when you come in their class. Nobody wants to hear their teacher talk forever, right? So when you get to come in and, give them all the great information.
Well, and I try to never say no to an invitation to speak. I've spoken out around Fort Worth. I've actually been invited to Far West Texas. We just haven't been able to schedule it yet. So, but I'll go anywhere to talk about Texas history for sure.
Speaking of, so Justice Wise and I've known about each other for years, but we actually met on board the Houston History Bus. Tell people how that happened.
Well, a good friend of mine turned 50 years old. His wife blessed him with a trip with a group of our friends on the Houston History Bus, and that's where we met. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was a big deal. It was like, wait a minute, you had two fans of each other. This is great.
Yeah, I was constantly told not to interrupt. Don't interrupt. This is not your show.
But we gave you the mic, though.
I did get the mic.
It was an honor because as we passed by his office, he got to talk about Texas history and that area and the connection of that as well. Well, let's see if we have any questions. We did have Michael Bloodworth, by the way, chime in. He kindly did and let us know. I'll read what he says. Note, the airport opened on March 2nd, 1928, so we got that part right. But March 2nd, of course, Texas Independence Day was no accident. So I think it's interesting that, of course, they picked that date. And Michael Bloodworth actually has these rare salt and pepper shakers from 1928 from the opening of the Houston Municipal Airport. And he's correct. I've never seen those before. And neither has he till he got a copy of those. So he's just got some great information and great archives on the Houston's aviation history page that he created, operates, and manages. So make sure you check that out. Well, I'm trying to think of any questions that we have from the audience. People are not chiming in, but that's okay. They're so fascinated what you're saying. We do have 5 questions for the audience, and then we do prizes on next month's show in April with Neil Parker. So there's 5 questions based on the conversation we had today. That's the most important thing because people were watching and tuning in. It proves that you were watching to the end as we're getting close to the end. 5 questions that we discussed within this topic.
All right. You want me to come up with them?
Yes, sir. What's your first question for the audience? We're not going to give the answers out until next week, but we're going to let people chime in, and then because it's Facebook Live, all the questions are time-stamped, so we'll know who answered them correctly.
All right. Well, the first question would be, where was the early capital of Texas that we discussed? The second question will be...
So real quick, to repeat that again for folks that are listening, where was the Capitol?
We showed a picture of a Capitol building earlier in the show, and where was that located?
Okay, so where was the Capitol building, the picture we showed, located? We want the city. Okay, second question.
City's good enough. And then another city question. The citizens of which city gave the 2 cannon to the Texan Army in 1836? Where did those cannons come from?
That's a good one. We talked about those cannons earlier. Okay, where did they come from? Okay, our third question.
Our third question will be, Pamelia Mann loaned 2 animals to the Texian Army. What were those animals, and what happened to those animals? Well, what were those animals?
That's an easy one.
What did she loan to the Texian Army?
Okay, that's an easy one, but you guys know that because you watched it earlier. You know Texas history. Now let's get a harder one. We got 2 more questions. Let's get a hard one for those real Texas history buffs.
I think I said this, or you said this one time. How long did the Battle of San Jacinto last?
This is a good one, okay? And every true Texan should know this, okay? Not the time of the battle, but how long did it last, okay? It's pretty well known, pretty well documented, pretty famous. So there you go. How long did it last, okay? Our 5th and final question.
All right, the final question will be, where were the first shots of the Texas Revolution fired?
Okay. As Justice Wise says often, we are in the high holy days of Texas history right now. Where were those first shots fired? Easy, okay? Guys, you got it? All right, so chime in with those questions. People are chiming in now. We got some more. Sharon, our buddy, is chiming in. Dorothy's chiming in. Davy Crockett is chiming in, too, appropriately. Marcia Lutz, our buddy over here and volunteer at the Heritage Society, one of the docents. Diane Barrett, she's also chiming in. David is also chiming in. Great. This is awesome. You guys are engaged and you're helping us out. Anything else as we get closer? Because we're about almost out of time. We want to say thank you again to Justice Ken Wise for joining us and sharing his knowledge. And like I said, he will also be on the radio show, so make sure you tune in tomorrow. You're everywhere. I'm telling you, you're everywhere.
It's a busy time.
Everywhere. The Houston Hour on 90.1 KPFT Thursday tomorrow at 3 o'clock with my awesome special guest co-host Heidi Vaughn from Heidi Vaughn Fine Art. Looking forward to that. All right, what else do we have? Lastly, we got to say lastly, big thank you to Dirty Tony's, guys. Dirty Tony's Premium Queen Olives. Here they are. Make sure you go out and get a copy. They're available at Specs. They're also available at Richard's Liquor. Okay, Dirty Tony's, Dirty Tony Olives, and Dirty Tony's olive juice. There it is, 100% olive juice, Texas company. Can't go wrong. Thanks for sponsoring the show. There they are. Thank you so much to Alana for helping us out. Isaac Saravia, Kian Harden, Caillou, and of course, Allison Bell, you met her earlier, our executive director, and of course, Minette Basel, our board president. I think that is all. We want to say thank you for joining us. We're going to be back, by the way, April 7th with the one and only Neil Parker talking about 6th Ward history. You don't want to miss that show. There you go, next month, so don't miss out. Good night, guys. Take care, Houston.